Hello, I'm Dr. Rostenberg, and I want to personally thank you for checking out my YouTube channel. Stay tuned at the end of the video, and I will give my recipe for your healing process. Now, I wish we could achieve our results with just diet and lifestyle alone, but supplements really do make the difference. And to help you with that, you'll have an opportunity to order supplements at a discounted rate. We'll see you then. If anybody has spent any time looking into health and wellness, you'll eventually come across an idea that health begins in the gut. And it's not a new idea, it's been around a very long time. But what we have now, it seems on a daily basis, more and more information to prove that point to be true. So our objective for tonight, my objective in being here and showing up, is to give you pearls of information, nuggets, if you will, that will help you understand just how important gut function is to the rest of your body. And I'm confident that what you're going to see tonight you probably have never heard before, some of these things. So what I'm sharing with you is really the latest stuff that we get our hands on in our office, the clinical information that we have that we use to help patients. So, one reason I love what I do, I never say to anybody, oh, it's just a job. It's far from that. It's really, it's just this wonderful experience where we get to meet amazing people who are, rising to challenges and get to see them transform and see their lives change. I mean, that's the most rewarding part about my job, is being part of that process, being an advocate for people. But the reason that job is very important, that work is important, is that we have a very poor healthcare system. That's why people are electing to come to stores like Natural Grocers and spend a little more money on their food so that they save a lot of money down the road on their medication, or they just improve their health and wellness. So, we were ranked 5th in life expectancy. Now we're 49th. There's no indication that trend is going to change. So when the next round of data comes out, we'll probably drop down a little farther on the list. We spend the most, we get the most, or the least in return. And with all this focus on obesity and being overweight, we would hope that there would have been some improvement in our society on the obesity epidemic. And I actually want to mention that, one reason that people aren't able to lose weight is, as you'll see tonight, they have problems in their digestive system. It's their exposure to antibiotics. It's all of the disruption of their normal gut bacteria that almost makes it impossible to lose weight. They'll go on a 500 calorie a day diet, they'll eat 5,000 calories a day. It doesn't matter, they can't make the scale change. I meet people like this practically every day. They could fast, they could eat, but body just stays the same. So we have to start looking at the problem differently. But this is from 2015, this is a couple months old, from Harvard. 74% of this country is overweight or obese. That's the worst it's ever been. So that trend doesn't show any signs of changing either. So is it just the food? Certainly the food is part of it. But is it something else going on that we're going to talk about tonight that we can all address and see some positive changes from? Again, I give a little drama here in the beginning, a little ranking system of the United States versus a lot of other countries that are developed. We're last. So we spend the most, we get the least, and a lot of that has to do with how we understand and treat digestive system problems. It seems like no matter what the complaint is, when you go into a doctor's office, the first thing that's reached for is an antibiotic. And we have overused those to the point now where we just spend a lot of time and energy trying to repair people after they've been damaged by multiple exposures to antibiotics. So we'll give you data on that tonight. And it's not just the United States. I'm not just going to pick on us. But really the whole world is going through this epidemic of being obese. And as you're going to find, the bigger our waist gets, the smaller our brain gets. That is a direct, scientifically proven correlation. So all the changes that happen inside of our body that cause our waistline to grow are creating metabolic changes and inflammatory changes that affect our brain. So when people lose weight and they get into a healthier size and shape for their body, what you're looking on the outside as their belly gets smaller, you actually think about their brain getting healthier. And this is really important because there's an epidemic also of dementia in our country. And sure, maybe in in history, there's, as people age, there's been a few cases of people, having dementia, but we've never experienced anything like what's going on right now. So when you look in the data, when you look at PubMed, you go to Google Scholar, and you try to understand, what is dementia, what is Alzheimer's? What you're going to look at is you're going to look for, you want to search for type 3 diabetes. That'll give you all the information you need to see. So type 1 is the juvenile, that's the old way they used to call it, juvenile onset. Adult onset is type 2. Again, it's an old definition. And then type 3 is truly dementia. So the brain itself becomes insulin resistant. And if we live to be 85 years old, if we attain that level of longevity, we have a 50% chance in the United States of having dementia. Those odds are not good. So we need to change that trend. And what I'm going to share with you tonight will give you some ammunition to do that. This is just a picture to give you a visual understanding of the difference between a healthy brain on the left and an Alzheimer's brain on the right. Now these are age-matched controls. This is the same age. That's what's happening inside the brain with dementia. And this is a process that doesn't happen overnight. It's ongoing after decades of inflammation, and it smolders. It's easier to see a 5-alarm fire. You just see the smoke and the flames, you put the fire out. It's much harder to find the thing that burns slowly underneath the surface for a long period of time. And that's more important. It's more important that we understand that. And in the natural medicine world, I would say that that's really what our expertise is. When there's a threat to life and a trauma or a car accident, the hospital is your best bet. They have the skills and the tools in the emergency room to keep people alive. And we do a great job of that. We're great with trauma. But once that trauma's over and the fire's out, the support we give to people dwindles quite a bit. So this is where really natural medicine doctors, chiropractors, naturopaths, alternative MDs come into play and really help to make changes. And this is a chart I've shown before as well. This is more data on brain health. And you'll see as we go, this is truly a story about our digestive system. But this is from the CDC. And the red line you're looking at that's dashed, that doesn't really exist before 1980, but goes straight up and is continuing to increase, is Alzheimer's disease. So something happened in 1980. Our genetic code hasn't changed, nothing has changed except some important environmental factors that have started to talk to our genes and cause more negative things to happen than positive. So one of the key points about this chart is to recognize that the low-fat diet campaign, don't eat eggs and don't eat fats. Fat causes heart disease. Fat makes you fat. That whole industry, the whole cereals and whole grains industry, that was really bad advice. So that attributed not only to Alzheimer's but also to increased rates of diabetes. The diabetes rate in America doubled after the American Diabetes Association came out and recommended that diabetics increase their intake of carbohydrates. So 200 years ago, the only member of your family, if you had any money, that ate oats were horses. And porridge is for poor people because it's cheap, easy food. If you have the option of getting something with more nutrition, please choose something else. So this is the world we live in. These are the problems which we inherit, and we have to work on them. So let's see, is this going to, okay. So I've shown this before too, and this was, I'm not picking on this family, but this was a photojournalism study. They asked the average American to go and, collect all the food they would eat in a week, put it on a table. They asked the average, Saudi Arabian family, German family, India, they did about 20 different countries. And the differences are incredible. You can take that reference. It's from the Daily Mail. It's a United Kingdom newspaper. But this is what the average American is bringing home. And the thing to remember is when we eat food, it really doesn't matter what we swallow and chew. It only really matters what we absorb, right? I mean, you can put something in your mouth and it can come out the other end of the tube and you're no worse for the wear. It didn't really do anything. You didn't absorb it. But what happens is we have gut bacteria that eat everything we eat. So if you flood your system with toxins in the form of food, aka drugs, then you're going to change your gut bacteria, and then you start to see changes in other parts of your body. And the important thing tonight is to recognize that changes in brain function, changes in cardiovascular health, changes in your weight, in your energy, your anxiety, your pain, your sleep, are not necessarily just a sleep problem. It's truly, you've got to look at the gut, because that's the roots of your health. That's the roots of your body. So if you're trying to nurse a plant back to health, you don't just ignore the soil and look at the leaves and the stem. You go to the roots, see what kind of soil it's in, see what's going on. And if you can nourish that and change that, then you start to see really big changes in the plant. And the same is true of us. Just another news blurb that came out recently that, things change a little bit, slowly at a time, and they're going to finally make trans fats illegal, but they give them like 3 years to make the adjustment. So they're going to have 3 years to invent something else to replace them, and that'll probably go on for 20 years before they make that one illegal too. But nonetheless, obviously the bureaucracy is trying to make a difference. So trans fats, as you know, are plastic. They don't rot, they don't break down. They're very manipulated food components. Using the word food to describe them is truly being very generous. This is a picture from Great Britain. They don't have a lot of GMO activity in Europe, but they're, the GMO companies are just pounding on that door to try to get it in there. And this is the condition under which the food grows. So these scientists, these PhD researchers, maybe they're just students working on their dissertation. They're not dumb. They're not going to go out and stand amongst the crops without wearing that hazmat suit unless they were really scared about what was being sprayed. So how can anything good come from that? You don't have to have a PhD to understand there's something wrong with that type of food. And you'll find out all about how GMOs injure us. That's another aspect of today's conversation, that you'll learn about the real underlying cause of how glyphosate injures our bodies. Okay? So this reference just shows us that, I mentioned antibiotics earlier, and I don't want to pretend that the world hasn't benefited from antibiotics. I mean, certainly the invention of penicillin and the ability to kill infections has been a life-saving treatment. It's changed our society, and it's given a lot of life to people. But you can take something beneficial and then overuse it and create a much different and harder to fix problem. So, I was on the phone today with a patient who, from the ages of 8, 9, 10, and 11, he had strep every 2 months and was on antibiotics every time. So that's 4 years, every other month. That's 24 rounds of antibiotics, between ages 8 and 12. And now, she's in her 50s and had, she was bleeding with a estrogen-related, hysterectomy type problem for a month. She had to have emergency iron infusions. She had to have her uterus removed. She's unable to sleep. Well, the fact that she's going through that today in her 5th decade is 100% correlated back to what she went through as a kid, all those changes in her gut. So that's what we're seeing in practice. So that's why we're sharing this with you. But we use a lot of antibiotics in the raising of livestock. So when you choose to buy organic, you're voting with your dollar for people who are smart enough and working hard enough to raise healthy animals without using these drugs. Because these drugs will get into your body. They'll also get into the soil. So when they're feeding cows massive amounts of antibiotics, then they use the manure to fertilize the field. The antibiotics go into the plant. Then they raise the plant and the soybeans and they give it to people. It's like we're vertically transmitting antibiotics. Okay? It doesn't need to be this way. If you give antibiotics to moms, their kids are twice as, 50% more likely to be obese. So you start to change gut bacteria in pregnant women, and you start to alter who lives in that gut. And that, as I said before, the people who have problems losing weight often have a gut problem. And so you can create a gut problem in utero and even before conception by having the mother take antibiotics. And when the baby's born, the baby doesn't get the right bacteria because it's been killed off. Interesting study. I mean, this is amazing what they're figuring out now. This is a study that was using mice. And what they did was they had one family of mice that were obese, one family of mice that were lean. They got other identical mice, and they created germ-free mice. So germ-free basically means there's absolutely no gut bacteria in the mouse. So it's like a blank canvas for them to put something in and see what happens. And so what they did was they took obese mice, they took the gut bacteria out of obese mice, they gave it to the germ-free mice who had no gut bacteria, and guess what? They got overweight and obese, just like the mice they got the bacteria from, okay? They took the lean bacteria from the lean mice, gave it to the germ-free mouse, didn't develop obesity, even though the mouse was eating like high carbohydrate, standard American diet type food. So it should have gotten the mouse should have grown obese, but because the mouse got lean gut bacteria, it didn't. And that's not even the best part of the study. So mice have a habit of eating each other's poop. It's just what little animals like that do. And they put into the same cage the mouse that had received the fat mouse's bacteria, the obese mouse, and they put inside that same cage the lean mouse that had gotten the lean bacteria from the lean mice. And the obese mouse fed on the poop of the lean mouse, and the lean fed on, so they fed back, and they mixed their gut bacteria around. But guess what happened? The lean bacteria helped the fat mouse lose weight and turn into a lean mouse, and it didn't cause the lean mouse to get overweight. So you can see that the changing gut bacteria reversed diabetes and obesity type models in mice. That's pretty awesome. That's really good for us because we can change and modify our own gut bacteria with really good results. So that's kind of on the weight loss diabetes side. But there's a bigger, even more important side of this gut problem, and that's neurological health. That's anxiety, depression, manias, panic syndromes, severe depression, all have a correlation back to gut. And it's really interesting how it all fits together. So imagine, if you will, you have 100 trillion little bugs in your gut. It weighs about 5 pounds. That's how much bacteria you have in your gut. You have DNA inside of your cells. We all know that. We have DNA, we have RNA. We have genetic material that is our kind of our book of life. That's how it's been described, the book of life. It's a wonderful way to say it. Now, the bacteria in your gut, if you added up all the viruses, bacteria, and microorganisms in your gut, and you put it on a scale, how much genetic material is in your gut, it's 100 times more than your body. There's 100 times more genes in your gut than there are genes in your body. So whose genetic code is going to influence yours more, you or what's living inside your gut? It's just a question to think about. If gut bacteria die, the dead body of a once living gut bacteria is a supremely irritating compound to your body. Okay? It's a very inflammatory compound. It's not even the living bacteria that bothers you. It's the dead body, the corpse, the rotting corpse of a dead bacteria floating in your bloodstream is extremely irritating. And we all have some of that in our body. It's normal and our body processes it out. But certain people in certain conditions have way too much. And they're called, for short in the scientific literature, we call them LPS, lipopolysaccharides. All it is scientific speak for dead bacteria parts. You know, the shell of the empty shell of the dead bug. That shell activates receptors on your blood vessels and your brain that just cause massive alarms to go off. You know, the air raid sirens turn on, the howitzers come out. You know, it's World War III. So the more dead bodies you have leaking up from your gut, the more inflammation you have. The more inflammation you have, the more depression. Your serotonin goes away. You start to have problems sleeping. You get the blues. You have apathy, lack of libido, lack of appetite. I mean, there's all these factors I'll show you here in a second. So this is just what the research is just saying. Hey, look, when bacteria comes up from your gut, and that's this picture right here, these little cells, the pink ones, if the bacteria gets into your bloodstream, those LPS, lipopolysaccharides, cause depressive symptoms. If you get inflamed, you get depressed. Let's see here. And, you know, there's way too many people in this country on antidepressants. We use 25% of all drugs in the world, but we're only 4% of the population. We're not really healthier for it, you know? That's the problem. We're not treating the root cause. So that's why this information is all about root cause. So, and in women age, what is the age group there? It's going to be 40 to 60. 1 out of every 4 women is on an antidepressant. It's because of all the estrogen imbalance and gut imbalance and antibiotics and toxins that have built up over time, and then they're just, you know, they just don't make enough serotonin. But that can be remedied naturally. I want to share these slides with you because, as I mentioned earlier, we have information that says when a mother takes antibiotics, it changes the odds of a child becoming obese. And it's not only whether your mom was on antibiotics or not, it's also how you were born and how you were handled when you first come out. So when a baby comes out of the uterus, it's a total blank canvas. That's a germ-free field where whatever gets planted first will have the opportunity to take hold and grow. So babies born through the birth canal get all of the gut, all the bacteria of the mom, and usually some of the bacteria from the colon is present in the birth canal, so it just gets all in the mouth, nose, and ears and all over its body, and it actually seeds the baby so that the baby begins to carry forward this healthy gut bacteria throughout its life. But this slide explains things a little differently. What happens when you have, let's say, you see the baby on the right, if you have cesarean section, and again, C-sections save babies' lives, okay? I'm not saying, let's get rid of them. I'm just saying that an elective C-section is one thing and a medical necessity is another. Now, I'm just going to say this, it's my opinion that if you choose to have a C-section, you're choosing to take something away from your child, which is its healthy gut bacteria. If you're going to do that, or if you have an emergency C-section, don't feel bad about it, or medical necessity, what you have to do is take, and this is what we did with one of my children, because it was a medical necessity. There was nothing we could do about it. And trust me, when I say we did everything, because we know a lot of different people, different practitioners, you take gauze, sterile gauze, you take sterile saline solution like you use for rinsing contacts, and you put it in a sterile container, like a urine collection cup. So you put the gauze in there, maybe a wad of it, drench it, get it wet, and you put it up in the birth canal and let it sit in there for 30, 45 minutes. So when the baby is born via C-section, you rub it all over its body. Everybody who has ever gone down that road, or anybody in your friends and family who has to have a C-section, that's what you got to do. And you at least start to get that bacteria on that baby. But C-sections deprive that baby of certain bacteria. So that seeding, what I just described, can help fix that. Bathing a baby too much, being a germaphobe, Howard Hughes type germaphobe, you don't need to do that. Just a little bit of warm water and a washcloth is fine to keep your baby clean. People are using too much soap, and it actually just removes bacteria off the skin. And then some other bacteria you don't want to get there will get there. Staph, strep, all these more aggressive types of bacteria. And then there's bottle feeding, right? So again, some women can't breastfeed, so I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I'm just saying that there's a reason why, God gave women the ability to rear young, and there's a lot of benefit to that. And they can't actually find everything they look for is in terms of the benefit they find. If it helps reduce asthma, reduce autism, reduce ADHD, reduce obesity, reduce, all these diseases are reduced when women breastfeed. Now, a lot of that has to do with the gut bacteria, okay? Your nourishing gut bacteria. And then dental mercury. Find an alternative. Someone told me once, a dentist, that let's just say that if they had to pay for all the damages that have been done by using mercury in the mouth, that it would completely bankrupt the American Dental Association. I mean, this is where the term Mad Hatter comes from, because they were using mercury to make hats, and they lost their mind. And mercury toxicity is a big problem. So we meet a lot of patients who are taking out their mercury. And it needs to be done safely and well. So this is another slide just on that same topic. And the reason I show this is they've done a good job giving you different colors of bacteria. And the colors and the pattern here is the different types of bacteria you see in a baby. So on the left, you see this kind of khaki background with these colors. And this is a vaginal breastfed baby. So they've given different species different colors. Now you look at a vaginal bottle-fed, you can see that the colors change, and then you can see C-section change even more. This is what the research is showing. When we change how babies come into the world, we change from the natural, status quo of breastfeeding and vaginal birth, you start to really change their gut. Now, I've shown this before too, but GMO studies in the United States are about 9 weeks long. They do them on animals. They say, look, doesn't cause a problem. What are you guys worried about? Well, then in France, they did it for 9 months, and this is what happened. So all the animals just fed GMO corn and developed all kinds of horrendous tumors and cancers. So, and I believe the state of California just this week or last week passed a law that said that Monsanto has to label Roundup to say it does cause cancer. Not might, glyphosate causes cancer. The evidence is overwhelming. I mean, there's no question. And I want to introduce everyone to this woman. She's a researcher. She has over 170 published papers. She's an MIT PhD. She's pretty smart. Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And what she's done is my understanding is she's an expert in computer science and analyzing large amounts of information. Her name is Dr. Stephanie Seneff. So she turned to this information gathering ability and kind of synthesizing all this data from whatever else she was working on onto autism. And these really interesting correlations started to show up. So the red line you see on the top chart is the use of glyphosate in the United States. That's how much Roundup's being used. The bars is the frequency of autism diagnosis. Now, correlation is not causation, okay? Don't get me wrong, but that gets my attention. That's a pretty close one-to-one direct correlation. The more glyphosate that's used in food, the higher the rates of autism become. And you'll soon learn how this can happen. So at her opinion, if we take an MIT PhD's opinion, is that one out of every two children will have autism in 2025. She's extrapolating current trends. 1 out of every 2 kid will be ASD, special needs, not developed properly, not be potty trained, not be able, what is going on? It's not okay. I may have a battery issue. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the reason I'm going to give GMOs a hard time, aside from the obvious that they're bad for us and they harm us, is that what they're doing is they're actually killing our gut bacteria. That's how GMOs hurt us. Okay? It's true that when Monsanto and the scientists who develop these products say, look, we don't have the same chemistry as plants, so it's not dangerous. Okay? Well, that's a fair statement, but our gut bacteria have the same chemistry as plants. So it murders our gut bacteria, right? So you can see that, who here has ever heard that you have more serotonin and melatonin in your gut than your brain? Is that a new idea? How many of you that's a new idea? Oh, okay. About half, more than half. It's absolutely true. About 90% of your serotonin is in your gut. You have 400 times more melatonin in your gut than your brain. So, what's going to influence what? Is your brain going to influence your gut? Or is your gut going to have more influence on your brain? I kind of think it goes in that direction most of the time. So tryptophan, tyrosine, phenylalanine, these are what we make our neurotransmitters out of. This is what we make dopamine and adrenaline out of, and we make serotonin. We make our own antidepressants. Comes from tryptophan. Turkey dinner, right? You eat a lot of tryptophan, you fall asleep. E. coli, all of our healthy bacteria in our gut can make these things. The bacteria in our gut make tryptophan, tyrosine, and phenylalanine. They use it for their own survival, and they poop a bunch extra out, and we absorb it, and we use it for our bodies. But what happens is, here you can see it again. I've circled them. This is it's called the shikimate pathway. It's basically how plants and bacteria produce these amino acids, and it allows them to survive, it allows them to stay alive. This is how glyphosate and Roundup kills plants. It blocks the production of these amino acids, and without these amino acids, the plant will die. That's how glyphosate works. Simplified. But we depend on those. This is how we make neurotransmitters. This is how we have an antidepressive effect. This is how we have a lot of energy and a lot of focus and a good memory and get a good night's sleep. These are the chemicals that make that possible. And so there you see where the big X is where glyphosate comes in and blocks that process. So I hope that the last few minutes has just convinced you to, don't spray it around your house, don't buy food that's sprayed with it. We really have to invest in a better way to get our food. And so here again, just showing you kind of how tryptophan becomes 5-HTP, which again, these are supplements that are used, they're on the shelf over here. 5-HTP, we use that in our office to treat, people who have sleep problems and who have low serotonin, just have a tendency to be depressed. Calms people down pretty well in many cases. So you can see serotonin comes from tryptophan, and then you can see dopamine comes from tyrosine. We're talking about Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, lack of focus, anger, addiction problems, cravings. People have cravings who can't, all a craving is an addiction that for that moment of time, that 5-10 minutes, you're an addict for 5-10 minutes till you get your fix. There's no difference. Cravings is a euphemism for addiction. And I'm here to tell you that all human behavior is addictive, okay? The baby is addicted to the mom's addicted to the baby. Some people are addicted to racing cars, climbing mountains, shooting guns, blowing things up. Some people are, and we all have our addictions. There's reasons why we are attracted to different ones too. That's an interesting study. But the overall big, huge 30,000-foot picture here is that gut inflammation causes brain inflammation. Leaky gut, brain inflammation. Whatever happens in your gut spills into your bloodstream and your heart pumps it up into your brain. So when you see changes in kids' behavior and you see changes in adults' behavior and they get really grumpy and angry and they just melt down and they're screaming and maybe they're 40 years old but they're doing a toddler's version of a meltdown. People do that. You're looking at the brain changing and they're trying to self-medicate. So when somebody grabs cookies and coffee and chocolate to make themselves feel better, all it is self-medication. And all you're doing is changing the level of neurotransmitters inside your brain. That's all you're doing. So if that's someone's problem, we can help them get around that by supporting their neurotransmitters by helping their gut work better. But it's all about gut inflammation, you guys. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify health, but as I said in the beginning, people have known this for a long time. We just have so much information now that makes it all just rock solid. And when we work with patients, the most important question that I will ever ask somebody is, how's your digestion? And how many rounds of antibiotics have you been on in your life? Because the answer to that question will determine the course of their care. If you give somebody who has a gut problem vitamins, B vitamins, alpha lipoic acid, CoQ10, vitamin C, you give them these really good things for health and wellness, but you don't treat a gut problem, all you do is throw fertilizer onto bugs. See what I mean? How do you know that they're going to benefit from that B vitamin if they don't have the right kind of bacteria or they're not digesting well? Likely they won't, and they may get worse. They may have a side effect. They may try a vitamin, like, man, that vitamin, gave me a headache. I got achy joints. I couldn't sleep for 2 days. We have people tell us these stories. Especially B vitamins do that, because B vitamins are like rocket fuel. Well, as long as your body benefits from the rocket fuel, that's great. But if you put it down the pipe and swallow a bunch of capsules full of B vitamins, how do you know that those B vitamins are going to actually be used by your body? It's, again, another thought-provoking idea. And that's why we have to make sure our guts are optimum. So I talked a little bit about serotonin earlier. And I use these slides with patients all the time, and it helps me, obviously, to see the differences. But you really need to create a bell curve for all of these neurotransmitters. On one side, you have too little. On one side, you have too much. It's very rare that people have high serotonin. It's not completely 0% common, but it's maybe 5% of people. It's a low number. Because everything in our body conspires to make us depressed. And serotonin is, lack of serotonin is what gives us depression. So inflammation lowers serotonin, bad digestion lowers serotonin. We know there's a lot of that. But when you have low serotonin, you'll see people who are just depressed. They may even get aggressive. They may even be violent. I'll show you some studies on that. Lack of pleasure, they may attempt suicide or think about it. Impulsive, low libido, low energy. That's just low serotonin. Now my favorite one is talking about dopamine, because this really explains people's behavior. So just as a thought experiment real quick, let's say we interviewed 50 women and 50 men. We went down to the Boise State Stadium. We just picked 50 random people. And the question we asked the men and women was the same. We said, do you find yourself more often grumpy and angry or worried and anxious? And then just check a box. Who would think that women would describe themselves as grumpy or angry most? Who would think that women would describe themselves as anxious and worrisome? Okay? Again, not trying to step on anybody's toes. We're just observing nature. Men are grumpy. Men get upset. Men start fights. Men start wars. You know, men love the adrenaline. They need it. Self-medication. Okay? Because testosterone causes men more than women to have low dopamine, and that's why they get grumpy. And all you got to do is do something exciting. Go ride your bike if you're a toddler. Go eat some sugar, and your dopamine goes way back up, and you're all good. Women, on the other hand, because of estrogen, actually are gifted with more dopamine than they need sometimes. And the more estrogen they have, the more birth control they've been on, the more estrogen problems they've been exposed to, the greater the level of anxiety, because it just slows down the removal of adrenaline. So what I'm suggesting is you can figure out how their dopamine levels are by their behavior. Cranky, angry, compulsive, seeking dangerous things, substance abuse and addiction, you've got low dopamine. And you can have the same, within a day you can actually go up and down, but people tend to have one they dominate on. And then with high dopamine you get anxiety. This is by far the average patient in my office. 85% of my patients are female. Anxiety, chronic pain, worry, insomnia. Those are the 4 biggest things that people wish they could change about their health from a emotional, neurological standpoint. So this is the chart, right? And you can see also, you'll see high blood pressure sometimes. You know, when you dump a bunch of adrenaline, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes really fast. So you can start to kind of pinpoint where on the curve you are. And so, as I mentioned, low serotonin is depression. But depression doesn't just mean you want to listen to heavy metal and paint in the color blue, okay? Depression is lack of brain function. That's the way to think about it neurologically. It doesn't mean that it just means that simply your brain isn't going fast enough. Well, what makes your brain go faster? Your neurotransmitters do. Like I said, when you have low serotonin, you cannot speed your brain up, neurons can't fire fast enough, and you just feel down. You're not interested in stuff. You have depression. So inflammation is what is at the root cause of depression, and gut problems cause inflammation. So you have gut causing inflammation, causing depression. If you learn one thing tonight, that's the one thing to take away. Gut problems cause inflammation, which cause depression. Lack of sleep, lack of interest in doing fun activities, low libido, all these things start to coalesce. Just more information that, when you have inflammation from your gut, you basically make MSG inside your head. Who here doesn't like eating MSG? It doesn't really make me feel good. I get kind of overstimulated and get a headache. But you will make that stuff. You'll make basically the same chemical as MSG inside your head when you have inflammation in your gut. So a lot of headaches, a lot of chronic headaches, a lot of chronic, a lot of those symptoms are due just simply to a gut problem. I'm going to run through a couple of these. This is MAO-A, and again, I'm getting a little technical for you guys, and that's okay. You're drinking from the fire hydrant. That's what you signed up for showing up here tonight. What I'm showing this to you is that you can see this big, tall bar on the graph called LOX. That's the speed of an enzyme. So the one on the left is like normal, average, everything's good. The one on the right, the huge tall one, is what happens when there's inflammation. So when there's inflammation from a gut problem, these enzymes go really fast, and that enzyme happens to be the one that breaks down serotonin. So inflammation in your gut will break down your serotonin and cause depression. So when we look at this from a natural medicine point of view, working on gut health is one of the first things you want to do with anybody who has a depression problem or an anxiety problem. We do more work with probiotics and things that kill bad bacteria like essential oils and berberine and other aspects in our office by far to work on anxiety than anything else. It's so effective. That's what we've learned to do. So again, I mentioned violence a little bit, but not to get too far off on that subject, but people who, I shouldn't say a lot. As far as I understand it, every documented, school shooting was, every kid who's done that was on some kind of medication. Every single one. So if I'm wrong, email me, prove me wrong, but I don't think I am. Every kid who's been involved in that kind of violence is on some kind of withdrawal or some kind of psychotropic medication. But what happens is when your serotonin's really low, you get depressed and you think negative thoughts, and then if your dopamine goes up, you begin to become uninhibited. So now you start to act on it. So this is why we want to, we want to help people. We want to help their digestive process. A lot of these kids who are taking medication for psychotropics, they just have bad guts. They had tubes in their ears when they were a kid. They were pumped full of antibiotics, tons of strep throat. They need to rebuild. So I'm just going to take a breather for a minute. How's everybody doing? Great. Everybody tracking? All right. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about adrenals, one of our favorite and most popular subjects. And I think it's just a fascinating study and an important one. So we're going to focus on how the adrenal glands and stress affects our gut. And one thing you need to know is that you have a barbed wire fence, so to speak, that your body produces to line your gut. So if your gut is where you and the outside world tango and come into contact, having a barbed wire fence is a good thing to kind of say, good neighbors make good fences. You stay over there where you belong, I'll stay here, Cortisol, when you're under adrenal stress, that barbed wire fence just goes away. You stop making it. It inhibits it. So when you have a high cortisol, when you're stressed out about a court case or a divorce or a sick child or some jerk boss breathing down your neck at work, whatever it may be, when you get that stress response, your gut it goes from a tight, tightly bound cells, and they start to spread out and open up. It's just what happens. It's just a reflex that we have. And that's called SIGA. You've heard of IgE or IgM, anybody? These are immunoglobulins in your body. Your immune system makes this stuff. It makes this nice razor wire to keep bugs out. It's really good. And then when you get stressed out, you stop making it. It's a great movie, by the way. And so the fascinating thing about IgA is it's the biggest part of this system in your body. So, it's in your nasal cavities, it's in your lungs, and it's in your gut. Because guess what? That's where the outside world contacts you. So that you have this fence, this metaphorical razor wire all over these areas. And it's really good at neutralizing viruses and bacteria without causing an alarm to go off. Like I mentioned earlier, the living bacteria that leaks into your body isn't such a big deal. It's the dead bodies that trigger this huge response. And the same is true in your nasal passages, in your lungs, and your gut. You have this IgA that your body's making, and what it does is it basically glues onto the bug, and when the bug gets stuck in the razor wire and your body sees that, it doesn't overreact. It just cleans up the mess without making a lot of inflammation. Here's a picture of a scientist, artist version of that. On the left side, where it says pro-inflammatory, stuff is leaking in without having that IgA next to it. So you can see this little oval bad guy leaking in, and then you get this big inflammatory response. Th1 inflammatory response. And then you can see on the right, the bug is stuck in that metaphorical razor wire, and then the body doesn't overreact. It just says, oh cool, we'll just take that out with the trash tomorrow and we're all good. Have a good night's sleep. One thing I found really interesting when we were studying this and looking into this is that half of all the adrenaline that you release, in fact, is released in your gut, not inside your body. All right? That's 50%. That's a significant amount. So every time we get stressed out, we're basically telling our gut bacteria, hey man, we are stressing out. There's a tiger chasing us. there's a forest fire, we're running from it, there's a flood, or no, maybe we're just sitting in traffic on the way to work, you know, honking at the person in front of us. Your body doesn't know any different. Doesn't matter what the stress is. The body will always react the same way. It's a reflex. But the problem with adrenaline being dumped into your gut, the reason I'm talking to you about it, is that it causes gut bacteria to grow super, super fast. That's one unfortunate side effect. It's like super bug food, okay? The bugs that live inside of us have co-lived with us for a long time. And they're listening through chemical signals to see how stressed out we are. Because when we kick the bucket and our days are done, that bacteria in our gut is just going to turn us into dust, move on, and that's the cycle of life. So it's listening to see how stressed out are we. So if we get really stressed out, the bugs get more aggressive because based on their understanding and how they operate, that means that our odds of kicking the bucket are going up, so they're going to get ramped up to break us down. And that's just kind of my own theory, but it makes sense. If you took a petri dish, 2 petri dishes, and you put blood in them, and you put E. coli, and in one petri dish you squirt in adrenaline, and the other one you don't. The one where you squirted adrenaline, you're going to see 10,000% growth. That's log to the 4th power. That's extremely rapid growth. So what this means is we have to this is why adrenal fatigue is such a tricky thing to treat. Because people might come in and say, I have adrenal fatigue, and we might agree, but they may have a gut problem now because of it that they keep dragging along with them and nobody's treating, so they don't get any better. So these red colors, now that first one I showed you was E. coli, and again, E. coli is a normal part of our gut. There's just some E. coli, bless you, that is aggressive, and you hear about that in the news, but it's supposed to be there. This is another type of gut bacteria that you can see the red stuff is the aggressive bacteria. And they squirt adrenaline in there and boom, the population goes crazy. Same thing with salmonella. The white bars, no adrenaline, the black bars, adrenaline. So we really have to control our stress response. I just think that's our number one thing every day is to keep calm and carry on. I mean, seriously, we really have to manage our stress. And there's a lot of strategies that help us. The adrenaline that goes into your gut, what it actually does too is it helps the bugs steal iron from you. Now our body controls iron. It keeps it super tightly bound. It's like on a Brinks armored car truck. There's armed guards. It's fully secure. But when there's adrenaline thrown into the mix, the bacteria can rip open the back door of the Brinks truck and grab your iron. And when they get their hands on iron, they grow really fast too. So we see a lot of people with anemia who have gut infections, and it's one of the diagnostic factors. So when you see, some people are just chronically anemic. Well, they have chronic, until proven otherwise, they have a chronic gut infection that keeps eating their iron over and over and over again. And then there's biofilm, and biofilm is super gross. It's like bug architecture. They build this like slimy microscopic fibrous stuff that lines the tissue, and then they live inside it. Seriously, it's like little bug architecture, And some reports say, some thought leaders on this believe that 99% of all bacteria lives inside biofilm, So adrenaline will make that go faster too. So but again, there's antidotes to this. Essential oils blow up biofilm really, really well. We use a lot of oregano oil, thyme. We have a blend we use in our office. It's really concentrated. It's oregano, thyme, sage, and lemon balm, and it will dissolve biofilm. It kills bacteria, viruses, worms. Sorry, I have to say that. It's true. People have worms inside their body. But that's outside the basis of our talk tonight, so I'll spare you that part. And then who here has ever heard of SIBO? Not a musician in Hollywood, but actually So SIBO is an acronym, and when you study stuff and you look at PubMed, the scientific language is so gobbledygooked. This one's actually pretty easy to pronounce. SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. This is a more common problem now. So if you listen to the name, it will tell you what the problem is. Small intestine. So now we have a location. We have a location inside the body. Bacterial overgrowth. There's too much bacteria growing in your small intestine. So some bacteria is good and great, but too much of a bacteria becomes a problem. Diarrhea, unexplained weight loss, weight gain, malabsorption. You know, you're taking iron, you're taking zinc, and your labs just never change. Well, it's because what you're putting in your mouth is not, that's just step one of a really elegant process that has to pull it into your body. And if you have an army of bugs in there, bacteria, that's moved up too close to your stomach, they eat your food before you do. This is a really growing and bigger problem. We deal with it a lot in our office. So this is a picture, it's not really, you know, accurate to scale, but the big blue part with the blue color, that's the colon. So you get bacteria, you get bacterioids in there, Clostridia species, undigestible fibers. And then in the small intestine, you see that the colors change. The environment's different. So, you know, when the environment changes, the type of bacteria that lives there changes. But what happens with SIBO is these, I'm going to call them the Christmas sprinkles, the green and red ones and the pink. The bacteria that's normally way down near your colon is growing up way up towards your stomach. And so when you eat food, you know, food comes from the top down this tube and it goes out the bottom, right? If we stretched it out, that's what would be happening. So if you're a bacteria, you're going to keep growing uphill towards where the food's coming from. You know, just keep growing uphill. If nothing is stopping you. Key point, if nothing's stopping you. And our body has ways to stop the growth of bacteria that shouldn't be there. And it's just that's not always working with people, but I'm going to demonstrate that a little tonight at the end. When you do blood work, how many people here have ever had low vitamin D on their blood work? How about low iron? Yeah, or, you know, if you ever were to look B12, vitamin E, vitamin K, vitamin A, you'll see malabsorption because those vitamins are not going to be absorbed when the bacteria gets a hold of your food first. That's one of the diagnostic factors of SIBO. So we see a lot of patients coming through, we do blood work on them, and their vitamin D is 22, their iron is 50, 34 sometimes, really too low. And so what you're looking at on the blood work is a hint of what's going on in the gut. So bad bugs cause malabsorption, definitely. And then the strange thing about this is you can have really high levels of folate. And so what you end up with is low B12, low vitamin D, low calcium, low protein. You can't build muscle, you don't have a lot of energy. But you also get really anxious and irritated because you get a lot of B9. So you get this overloading of B9 with the deficiency of everything else. And that's a troublesome situation for your body because B9 is a very powerful vitamin. It helps you make neurotransmitters. It's a stimulant. So you end up with all this extra B9, and people with this SIBO problem, you know, they don't feel good, partly because of the elevation of B9. And so what do? They say they don't feel good, and they read online, they come to a grocery store like this, they go to a doctor, and they say, here, take these B vitamins, you'll feel better. And they take them, they feel worse. Well, it's because that's going on. You got to treat that first. And then they can tolerate B vitamins just fine. Now we're zoomed into the inside of the gut. We're way down at a small level. And you can see the bad guys kind of look like little cockroaches there, little pink ones. Those are pathogens. Those are bad bugs, aggressive bacteria. They eat your vitamins and they poop out toxins all day long. They steal all your vitamins, and what they poop out just makes you sick. Your liver has to detoxify it, wasting your energy and all this stuff. They eat carbohydrates. They eat junk food. When we saw that picture of the average American family eating just a GMO plasticized pile of garbage, all they're eating is sugar and corn and some food coloring, and all they're doing is feeding the pathogenic bugs. So what you end up doing, if you're in your garden, if you only gave a certain type of plant food and you starved out the other plants, the plant that's getting fed will grow and the other ones will shrink. That's just logic. Well, your gut's the same way. So when you start to change to eating, organic vegetables, and you're, steaming your broccoli every day, and you're eating fresh ginger and all these wonderful foods that you see in the organic section that you see at the farmer's market, then you're actually feeding the good bacteria. They need that undigestible fiber. Those real fibrous vegetables that are kind of chewy and you got to steam them to soften them up, that's the food that your gut bacteria that you want lives on. So when you change your diet, it's not even so much as what's in the food that makes you healthy. I mean, that's sure, that's part of it. But it's because it starts to change your garden and your gut. And then that ripples out and changes all these things. So I talk about stomach acid all the time. It's one of the most important things in our body. Who here has gotten food poisoning in the last couple of years? Anybody? So what's interesting about food poisoning is not everybody gets it the same. Some people go out and have dinner and only one person at the table, they all have the same food, one person gets food poisoning. How do you explain that? Is it the germ or is it the organism that it received the germ that's the problem? Without stomach acid, you will be much more susceptible to food poisoning. And I'm going to ask the question, when does food poisoning start? Does that mean that every time you go out to eat, there's 0 bacteria in the food? Or is there a magical number when you go over that number, now voila, you have food poisoning? We all know that's not true, so we know it's a spectrum. There's perfectly clean, super fresh food, and then there's progressively food that's been mishandled that has more and more bacteria in it. And everybody's threshold for when they get sick is different. Can we agree? When you put people on proton pump inhibitors for health problems regarding the stomach, you set them up for failure down the road. You change the gut. Not only do you take away the acid in the stomach that's supposed to be there like an acid bath to kill whatever gross stuff is in your food, because you know what, we've only been having refrigeration for 60 years and our entire ancestors were able to probably eat old food just fine, and they didn't get as sick as we did because they didn't have the same health problems and all the stress, and their stomachs were a lot more robust. But proton pump inhibitors and the use of acid blocking drugs sets the stage for small intestinal bowel overgrowth. Normally when food leaves your stomach, when you're healthy, it's very acidic. And that acidic, they call it chyme, conjures up wonderful images, right? When this bolus comes out of your stomach, it's very acidic. And so it starts to create changes in the pH, and then your pancreas releases its juices, and the gallbladder releases its juices, and all these things work harmoniously together, and it kind of rinses the bacteria 20 feet back down the tube, 15 feet back down the tube. But if all of a sudden you stop the stomach from becoming acidic, now you stop the gallbladder from squeezing, now you stop the pancreas from releasing, and now there's nothing to stop the bacteria from crawling up further. You see what I'm saying? So if I meet people who've been on proton pump inhibitors for 10 years, I mean, you're causing permanent damage to the bones, to their immune system, to their gut. So stomach acid is huge. This is why we probably use more bottles of stomach acid than any other supplement in our whole office. It's just helped so many people. So look for second opinions. I mean, obviously there's some cases where like a bleeding ulcer is a threat to life and you want to do a PPI for a short time. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm just saying, here's what the research says. They're really, really popular drugs. If you want to know what's wrong with America, you just get online, you search top 10 most popular drugs, figure out what they do and work backwards. That's our biggest problem, right? People have stomach problems, they're depressed, a lot of cancer. So prolonged PPI treatment, I'm going to say prolonged in my mind is 4 weeks, maybe even 2. People are on them for a lot longer than that. Produce bowel symptoms and small intestinal bowel overgrowth. They gave healthy people, normal healthy people, they just took the proton pump inhibitor and they started to get bloated and have all these side effects like they gave these people a bowel problem just by having them take the medication. If they were healthy to start with, they started to get sick as a side effect. The gallbladder, like the forgotten organ, they just gets cut out, gets sick, out you go, adios, now you're fine, go on with the rest of your life. I don't agree with that. The gallbladder has a very important role to play in lots of our health. The same nutrients, the same nutrition that makes your gallbladder work allows you to produce GABA. GABA is the only calming neurotransmitter we have. So what we see are typically women, usually, fertile, lots of estrogen, female, lots of estrogen, usually overweight, lots of estrogen. Their gallbladder gets just beat up from that, and then it gets taken out. Now you end up with someone who without a gallbladder who likely develops anxiety and other sleep problems and fibromyalgia and all these other issues that are due to the imbalance of neurotransmitters. So you use something called taurine and you use something called glycine to make bile. Bile is like soap. If I went out here and got that natural soap they sell and I flipped the lid and I smacked it, I could probably shoot it across the room. This stuff is really runny. That's how soap should be. But when you have a estrogen problem and you've got a gut problem and your body runs out of these nutrients, your bile turns into molasses. Could not do that same experiment with molasses. I would turn the jar over and, we'd have to wait a while for it to come out. You don't want bile to turn into molasses, but that's exactly what happens because of these things I'm describing. So bile is amazing. It's super important. It allows you to digest calcium. Osteoporosis, low bile. Osteoporosis, low bile. Okay? Lack of vitamin D, low bile. Brain, again, all these brain symptoms, ADD, ADHD, attention deficit problems, anxiety, are really helped with fish oil, high dose omega-3s. But people become deficient in omega-3s because their gallbladder doesn't work and they can't absorb it. So not only all of that, but the gallbladder does what soap does. Soap rinses bacteria off of your plates, right? That's why we use it in the dishwasher. Well, it also rinses bacteria off the wall of your gut and pushes it back downstream. So if the gallbladder doesn't work, the bacteria can stick to the wall and keep climbing up towards your stomach. Begins to cause more malabsorption, more of that type of a problem. And if you've had your gallbladder taken out, you just have to take bile salts and bile support every day for the rest of your life. That's the cross you bear. And it will help you greatly. So we're wrapping it up here with all the info, and then we're going to talk about what we can do to fix it. And I'm going to demonstrate a couple things. But again, it's interesting that antibiotics designed to kill bacteria actually cause SIBO. They cause small intestinal bowel overgrowth. Because you kill one species, and then the other species no longer have competition, they just go crazy. And when you kill the good guys with antibiotics, the peaceful hippie farmers down there, then you're just left with the gangsters, and they're robbing and stealing, and they're going crazy with all the changes in the environment. And so that's really the end result of all this antibiotic use. You kill the good guys, nothing's left to compete for the bad guys, so they just go absolutely nuts. There's lots of data. C. diff significantly increased, after taking antibiotics. E. coli, same story. Antibiotics. We don't want to live without them, guys, but we don't want to live on them. And, everybody should be thinking about diet and what they're eating and how they're digesting their food rather than going into the doctor and going, here, what's the pill to make my symptom go away? Well, that idea, I think, has kind of run its course and kind of proved that it just doesn't work. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the predicament that we do today. It kills your good guys. Antibiotics kill your good guys. And even like I showed before, even if you don't take antibiotics, it's in the water, it's in our food. We all have to be taking probiotics and be actively trying to help our gut. So, who here knows what part of your body, what part of your gut is located right here? I'll take some guesses. So here's my belly button, here's my hip right here. What's the anatomy of our body? Okay, liver is I give you credit, you're on the right side of the body, but the liver is actually up under the rib cage. So we're down in the abdomen. Appendix is an excellent guess. We're getting really, really close now, really warm. Another great guess. I'll go with appendix and I'll connect it back into where I was going with this. It's the ileocecal valve. Okay? What is that? I know, it's a hard question. What can I say? Everybody can see the appendix hanging off down there? The little, looks like a stem off a squash. Well, the appendix, they used to think did nothing, and I can only imagine the hubris that people actually come up with this stuff. Nothing in the body does nothing, by the way. But the appendix is like secondary education. It's like a university where all your probiotics live. And when you have diarrhea and everything's gone, they crawl back out and repopulate. That's a smart idea, isn't it? Have a little pocket where all these bugs live, and if you have diarrhea and everything flushes, then it just refill you back up. So everything has a purpose. But the problem, the issue at hand, and we'll demonstrate this, and I can guarantee we'll find some tonight, that the ileocecal valve is a very common dysfunctional part of our body. So many of you know what a valve is. A valve is something that opens and closes. It controls movement. So we're going to use a plumbing, kind of plumbing metaphors here. So you have your large intestine and you have your small. And the small intestine kind of T-bones into the large, and there's a check valve. And a check valve, it just prevents backflow. You want things moving in one direction, not the other. You have one on your sprinkler system. You have one in your house. It's important, obviously. Well, you have one in your body. This is a check valve that prevents you from getting stuff in the bathroom leaking back into the kitchen. And your ileocecal valve is a muscle. In fact, your entire gut is a muscle. Everything from your lips to your other end is one big long muscle. It has muscle fibers, has nerve endings, it contracts and relaxes. It has motor movement. But due to all the factors we discussed, stress, toxins, and a very hectic, toxic world we live in, and bad food choices, etc., the ileocecal valve gets stuck open 95% of the time. In a few cases, we find it closed. But it gets stuck open. So this muscle gets weakened, and it kind of relaxes and gets all flaccid. And so now the ileocecal valve isn't pulsing and open. It's not a check valve anymore. It's just an open door. And that affects the motility and the pushing of the food and the stool where it's supposed to go. So people lay down at night, and they've been standing all day, and so that kind of helped keep things where it was supposed to be. Now they lay down, and now with gravity changing, the stuff in their large intestine can leak back into their small intestine. They reabsorb their stool. They reabsorb garbage and toxins multiple times. And that just puts a huge burden on your liver. Your liver, it's like you're asking your liver to do the same chore 3 or 4 times. And that's one of the aspects of it. So the ileocecal valve not working right predisposes people to having this gut that just doesn't function. It allows the bacteria from your colon to grow through that door and keep going up instead of the door closing and opening and keeping everything where it should be. The check valve is no longer working. It's easy to figure out and treat. It's actually very safe, very conservative, and it responds really well to the type of kinesiology and chiropractic I'm going to demonstrate. And so this is just recent science that says, look, if you don't fix the ileocecal valve and get this really important part of our gut muscle system working, then you're going to predispose yourself to having SIBO. And this is the cool thing is once someone shows you how to do this, you really can do this for yourself. You don't have to go and come and see me in my office, although I'd love to see you. But you can literally just do this on your own at night. You can massage your own ileocecal valve and gain a big therapeutic benefit from it. If it hurts, you're in the right place. That's what you need to tell yourself. Your body uses pain to communicate. If it's pulsing like this, then to move your hand. You're not in the right place, okay? But if it hurts and it's in that area, you're in the right place. So we're wrapping it all up. I've dumped a ton of information onto you. But really what have we learned? We've learned that gut health influences and has a huge impact on brain health, okay? So all those neurotransmitters in our gut, all the inflammation from our gut is what really determines how good we feel up here. And yes, having a gut infection can change your personality. It can make you sad, it can make you blue, it can make you depressed, it can make you anxious, it can ruin your sleep, it can cause chronic pain. It can do all those things. We know we have the mechanisms. It's modern lifestyles and the way we treat health problems without thinking about the long-term consequences that set these problems up. All this antibiotic use without looking at dietary and lifestyle factors first, making those things change, sets people up for these problems down the road. GMO foods, we've really gone after those tonight. And again, inflammation, that's the one thing. Remember, gut problems create inflammation, create brain problems. Take that home, write it on a 3x5, put it on your mirror, and just You'll learn that when you meet your friends at church and your community and your family, people tell you they're having health problems. Think about what we're talking about tonight. It's gut-based until proven otherwise. And then, overuse of antibiotics. So this is going to be hard for you to see. But what I'm showing you is one of the most useful tests that we run in our office. Now, I like to get all the information I can during a physical exam, and we really can get a ton of information during an hour exam. It's a great experience. But there are times when I want more information. There are times when I don't see patients personally. They're over the phone or Skype. So we say, okay, we want to look and see what's going on in their gut. What this test is called an organic acid test. And I'm not an organic chemist. I'm assuming nobody here is tonight. But what it's measuring is things in the urine that come from the gut. If the things in the urine, if the chemicals in the urine are elevated, we can be certain that the production of them in the gut is elevated, right? So if they come from the gut, they're showing up in the urine in low amounts, we say, okay, there's not a lot going on in the gut. But if all of a sudden you're 5 or 10 standard deviations out of range on markers for fungus and candida and bacteria, then you've got a lot of that. So you have to treat that first. Because all the supplements and food you eat, all the kombucha, all the sauerkraut, all the Jerusalem artichokes, all this stuff that people say, oh man, this is how you rebuild your gut. Well, I'm going to give you a wrinkle to think about, a wrinkle in this story. If your gut is sick with an overgrowth and you throw a whole bunch of bug food in there, like fermented food, you just feed what's in there. I mean, logically it makes sense, right? So you want to remove the pathogens, replant with good bacteria, and then you can feed those guys. And you're cruising. You're good. But this individual is, she's in her 40s, she's female, extreme fatigue, had some challenging health problems over the years, got some initial really big success, but then kind of plateaued. And so as we developed this research and looked at these areas, it was clear to me that we needed to look at our gut from a fresh point of view, and lo and behold, here's the next story and chapter in her book, right? Next chapter. So all these H's, you can at least see the red, you'll see these little red symbols, that's high. So she has 3 high fungal markers and 5 high bacterial. And not just high, I mean this is 10, this bottom one, the bottom H is 10 standard deviations elevated. That's C. diff metabolism. So she has a lot of C. diff. C. diff is pooping stuff out that's getting into her brain that's making it hard for her to make neurotransmitters. So she's just fatigued and she doesn't have endurance to do anything because she can't make the chemicals because the bugs are interfering with it. So then we go kill some bugs and help relieve that stress from her body and have her do coffee enemas, because that may sound like a gross thing to do, but it's actually extremely gentle and healthy, and it allows the liver to detoxify, because all these stuff going on in the gut is going straight into the liver every time. It doesn't go anywhere else but the liver first. So you have 26 feet of tube that the liver is trying to clean. And when you have an overgrowth, you get extra stuff for the liver to do, you get fatigue, and your liver just doesn't feel like it's working, you can't tolerate alcohol, I mean, you get all these funky symptoms. So we nourish the gut, and that's how we heal the brain. The vagus nerve is this big, long nerve that comes out of your brainstem. It goes all the way down to your colon. They call it vagus because it's from the word vagabond, which means wanderer, and it wanders all the way through your body. It's cranial nerve 10. It controls your voice, your swallowing, helps you sleep helps you breathe while you sleep, moves your diaphragm, moves your heart, it's incredible. This thing is incredible. And so there's a communication between the bacteria in your gut and what's going on there, and it sends signals that activate the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve goes up and talks to your brain. So there's a communication between the two. So when you have this aggressive bacteria and this imbalance in your gut, you get this irritating type of signals coming up into your brain. Your brain changes the signals it sends the rest of your body. You get anxious, you get worried, you get chronic pain, you can't sleep, you have no energy. Your whole outlook on the world changes from what's in your gut. Remember the story about the mice? Fat mice, lean bacteria, lean mice. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. They lower anxiety. Probiotics, the right kind, the right dose, they lower anxiety. They increase this chemical called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which, again, we'll abbreviate it BDNF. NF. It allows you to make new brain synapse connections. It's like makes your brain grow. That's what this stuff does. It's brain fertilizer. It cuts through anxiety. It calms you down. They basically used probiotics. This is all done in mice studies, but they gave lactobacillus to mice, and they got less stressed out. They did the same stressful thing to mice without this lactobacillus. They did it with the lactobacillus. The mice who got the probiotics were just much more calm, much lower cortisol, much lower anxiety. Then they cut the vagus nerve and they didn't get any benefit. See what I'm saying? What's going on in your gut is talking through your neurological system to your brain, and when they cut the vagus nerve, they lost the mice didn't get any positive change from that. We've tortured a lot of animals to figure this stuff out, by the way, but you know, we need to take this research and apply it. Then it was worth it. Another study I think is really interesting. This is about brain inflammation, kind of tying back to what I said in the beginning about Alzheimer's and dementia. You don't get that kind of changes in the brain unless there's inflammation. Over a long period of time, that smoldering fire I talked about. So these yellow areas on the screen, on the brain, are where there's inflammation. You can see placebo and you can see B vitamin group. So they simply gave them B vitamins, and the amount of brain inflammation went down significantly. So I'm not suggesting we don't need B vitamins. I'm just suggesting that you make sure the gut's working, and then you can jump off the deep end and go after that stuff, and you're going to get the full benefit. But B vitamins prevent, brain changes and keep your brain working well. They help the white matter and the gray matter stay strong. And this was a great study. This was from 2013. So it prevented the destruction of brain tissue. Let's see, a couple more here. So this was a big study in kind of made waves. And what they did was they genetically produced this yellow mouse, this obese, cancer-prone mouse. They call it the agouti mouse. And then when the agouti mouse was pregnant, they gave the agouti mouse it had soy estrogens in it. So, people say, soy's bad. Well, it's not. That's way oversimplifying the issue. And the phytoestrogens in soy prevent cancer. That's a fact. They gave them to these mice. And the mouse who got the estrogen, plant-based, natural estrogen, the plant nutrient from soy, instead of giving birth to 4 or 3 really obese babies, it gave birth to only 1. So the nutrition changed the genes of the offspring because it changed which genes turned on and off. And they were like, that's interesting. And then they did the experiment again, and they took BPA, like the stuff in plastic that causes cancer, and they exposed the mom to it. And the BPA created the big fat, the obese yellow mice as the offspring. Then they gave the BPA and they gave B vitamins like B12, B9, choline, trimethylglycine. These are methyl donors. They gave them methylation support, and it canceled the toxins effect. So the benefit of this for us, walking away from this talk tonight, is that nutrition changes genes. And there's maybe 5% of people who are sick who can blame it on a gene. That's only 5%. Everybody else, like probably everybody in this room, we have to take responsibility for it. And if we can get moms and people to change their nutrition, you actually change the genetic code of the offspring. And you prevent, even if the mom had the disease, the obesity, she can give birth to healthy, lean kids by getting the right nutrition into her body. I mean, that's kind of cool. So that's what gets me excited, because this stuff works. So here's my recommendations. You do an in-depth history. You got to get the history of antibiotic use. What were the, did you have tubes in your ears growing up? Did you have a bunch of sinus infections? You had several rounds of antibiotics. You got to get that history to figure out what the total exposure is to these gut-disrupting medications or situations is. Do a very in-depth, physical exam, neurological, kinesiological. I'll demonstrate the kinesiology in just a second here. Again, looking at reflexes, seeing which systems are under the most stress. Food allergy testing is useful. when you're trying to figure out how to help people, you really want to make sure that you're not eating food you're allergic to. And I'm gonna say that everybody in this country has food allergies, whether they know it or not. And we often are addicted to food that we're allergic to because it raises dopamine, and we get high from it, and we're self-medicating, so we just keep eating it over and over again. Blood testing is useful. You know, we look at lots of different factors. Again, as I said, you know, blood tests, a lot of these medical tests can be valuable in the natural medicine approach. You just have to interpret them differently. You have to be a little more, you have to think about it a little more to put the pieces together. But we do them all the time. They're very helpful. I showed you the organic acid test. It's actually 4 pages. I just showed you the first page. There's 3 other pages of, there's 74 different markers that you get with an organic acid test. It tells you about your mitochondria, your neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, norepinephrine. And then, you know, most people see changes pretty quick, even within a week or 2, but, you know, typically, depending on the nature of the condition, it could be 4 weeks or 12 weeks or longer to your destination, but that's just kind of the overview of what I recommend. Thank you so much for watching this video and sharing it with your friends and family. I personally believe, as I'm sure you do as well, that educating ourselves about what it truly means to be healthy is the only way we're going to change healthcare. I have created a website as a resource for you. To take advantage of this information, navigate to www.beyondmthfr.com and take a look around. In addition to blogs and articles I have written, you will find a tab on the menu labeled Protocols. It is a growing list of tools that I use in my office to help support my patients. You will find background information on common health conditions, you will find a detailed supplement protocol, and you will find dietary advice to support the body's natural healing process. You will also have access to order recommended supplements at a discounted rate and have them shipped to your front door. I'm giving you the tools that I use in practice every day to help you overcome health challenges and live a happier, healthier life. I have done my best to give you that information, and you will find it on these protocol pages. If you are looking for more help than simply what supplements should you take or what diet should you follow, I'm inviting you to come to Boise and see me. Let me and my team and my staff take care of you. We have patients coming from all over the country and all over the area on a regular basis, and there's room for you too. Now, if coming all this way to Boise is too big of a commitment, then please pick up the phone or email my office. We can work together from a distance.